The champagne glass in my hand trembled slightly as I stood outside the private lounge of the Grand Meridian Hotel, listening to my husband's voice through the crack in the door. My heart pounded so hard I thought everyone in the hallway could hear it. "You should see how lost she looks without me telling her what to do," Trevor said, his voice dripping with amusement. "She can't even order at a restaurant without asking my opinion first." A woman's laugh echoed through the door. "Adriana." I recognized her voice immediately. She worked at Trevor's company as his assistant, and I had invited her to our charity gala tonight like a fool. "Does she really not know about us?" Adriana asked, her voice sickeningly sweet. "Natasha? She's too busy trying to be the perfect wife to notice anything. She gave up her career to support mine and now she has nothing. No job, no skills that matter anymore, no money of her own. She's completely dependent on me." I pressed my hand against my mouth to keep from making a sound. The elegant ballroom behind me was filled with 500 guests, all celebrating the charity work that I had organized. My charity work. But I stood frozen in this hallway, listening to my husband destroy me with his words. "What if she finds out?" Adriana asked. "So what if she does? Where would she go? Back to her little hometown? She hasn't worked in 5 years. Nobody would hire her. She needs me and she knows it. That's why I can do whatever I want." The sound of kissing made my stomach turn. I had been married to Trevor Blackwood for 5 years. 5 years of being the perfect wife, hosting his business dinners, managing his household, supporting his dreams while I buried my own. I had a business degree from Columbia, but I gave up my career when Trevor said he needed me to focus on his growing empire. "You're terrible," Adriana said, but she was laughing. "I'm practical. Natasha serves a purpose. She's beautiful, well-educated, and she knows how to handle social situations. She makes me look good. But that's all she is. Decoration. The moment she stops being useful, I'll replace her." Something inside me snapped. Not broke. Snapped. Like a rubber band that had been stretched too far for too long. The trembling in my hands stopped. The tears that had been threatening to fall dried up. A strange calm settled over me. I stepped away from the door and walked back to the ballroom. My reflection caught in one of the hallway mirrors and I stopped to look at myself. I was wearing a custom Versace gown in deep emerald green. My dark skin glowed under the lights, and my natural hair was styled in an elegant updo. Diamond earrings sparkled at my ears, a gift from Trevor's mother, not from him. I looked like success. I looked like wealth. I looked like someone who had everything. But I had nothing. Nothing that was truly mine. The ballroom was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers, white orchids on every table, a string quartet playing in the corner. I had planned every detail. I had contacted every donor, organized every aspect of this event. And it would raise over $2 million for children's education tonight. My best friend Rita found me standing near the entrance. "There you are. I've been looking everywhere. The mayor wants to meet you." Rita had known me since college. She was one of the few people from my old life that Trevor approved of, probably because her husband owned a successful law firm. "Rita," I said quietly, "I need to tell you something." She looked at my face and immediately pulled me to a quiet corner. "What happened? You look strange." "Trevor is having an affair with Adriana. I just heard them talking. He said I'm nothing without him. He said I'm just decoration." Rita's eyes widened, and her hand flew to her mouth. "That piece of—" "Don't," I interrupted. "Not here. Not now. I need to finish this event. Can you help me get through the next 2 hours?" "Of course, but Natasha, what are you going to do?" I took a deep breath and straightened my shoulders. "I'm going to smile. I'm going to give my speech. I'm going to thank everyone for their generous donations. And then I'm going to destroy him." Rita grabbed my hand. "You're serious?" "I've never been more serious about anything in my life. He thinks I need him. He thinks I'm helpless. He's about to find out exactly how wrong he is." The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I smiled until my face hurt. I gave my speech about the importance of education and opportunity. I thanked Trevor publicly for his support, watching him preen under the attention while Adriana stood at the back of the room smirking. When Trevor came over to kiss my cheek for the cameras, I let him. When he whispered, "Good job, darling," I thanked him sweetly. When Adriana walked past us and gave me a pitying look, I smiled at her warmly. Nobody knew that inside I was already gone. I was already planning. I was already 3 steps ahead. The old Natasha, the one who asked Trevor's opinion about everything, who doubted herself, who had given up her dreams, she died in that hallway outside the private lounge. The woman who walked through the charity gala that night was someone new. Someone dangerous. someone who had nothing left to lose. At midnight, after the last guest had left and the staff was cleaning up, Trevor came to find me. I was in the hotel's business center, making notes on my phone. "Ready to go home?" he asked, loosening his tie. "You go ahead," I said calmly. "I need to finish some thank you notes while everything is fresh in my mind." He looked surprised. "I never stayed anywhere without him." "Are you sure?" "It's late." "I'm sure. I'll take a cab." He shrugged and kissed the top of my head like I was a child. "Don't stay too long. You know how you get when you're tired." The moment he left, I opened my laptop and started searching. Job opportunities, apartment listings, lawyers who specialized in divorce. I worked until 3 in the morning, building the foundation of my escape. When I finally went home, Trevor was asleep. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom looking at him. He was handsome, successful, and absolutely certain of his power over me. He thought he knew me. He thought he owned me. He was wrong. I went to the guest room and lay awake until dawn, my mind racing with plans. I had a business degree. I had 5 years of experience managing Trevor's social calendar, organizing events, and networking with some of the most powerful people in the city. I had skills. I had intelligence. I had determination. Most importantly, I had something Trevor didn't know about. When my grandmother died 3 years ago, she left me $200,000. Trevor had been traveling when the will was read, and I never mentioned it. I put it in a separate account that he didn't know existed. It wasn't much compared to his millions, but it was mine. It was enough to start over. As the sun rose over the city, I made myself a promise. Trevor Blackwood thought I couldn't survive without him. He was about to learn the most expensive lesson of his life. I wasn't just going to survive. I was going to build an empire that would make his look like a corner store. And I was going to do it all without him. I was in the kitchen making coffee when Trevor came downstairs at 7. He looked surprised to see me awake and dressed in jeans and a simple sweater instead of the designer outfits he preferred me to wear. "You're up early," he said, reaching for the coffee I'd made. I couldn't sleep. He barely looked at me as he checked his phone. The gala was successful. My team said we exceeded our fundraising goal. "Good job with that." "Trevor, we need to talk." Something in my voice made him look up. I had never used that tone before. Flat. Final. Done. "About what?" He set down his phone, already looking annoyed. "I heard you last night. At the gala. You and Adriana in the private lounge." The color drained from his face for just a second before he caught himself. Then his expression hardened into something cold and mean. "How long were you listening?" "Long enough." He had the audacity to sigh like I was inconveniencing him. "Natasha, let's be adults about this. You know how these things work in my world. It doesn't mean anything." "You're right," I said calmly. "It doesn't mean anything. Our marriage doesn't mean anything. Not to you. Don't be dramatic. You have a good life. A beautiful home, unlimited credit cards, a social position. What more do you want? Respect would be nice. Loyalty would be better. But since you're not capable of either, I want a divorce." He actually laughed. "A divorce? Natasha, be realistic. What are you going to do? Where are you going to go? You haven't worked in 5 years. You have no income, no career. Everything you have, I gave you. Then I'll give it all back. I don't want anything from you." His laughter died. "You're serious?" "Completely." Trevor set down his coffee cup and crossed his arms. This was the stance he used in business meetings when he was about to destroy someone. "Fine. You want a divorce? You'll get nothing. The prenup you signed makes that clear. You'll walk away with whatever you brought into this marriage, which was nothing." "I know. I read the prenup again last night. I'm fine with that." "You're fine with being broke? With having nowhere to go?" "Natasha, I don't think you understand what you're saying." "I understand perfectly. I'm saying that I would rather have nothing and be free than have everything and be your prisoner." His face turned red. "Prisoner? I gave you everything. I made you into someone. Before me, you were just another girl with a degree and no prospects. I turned you into someone people respect." "No, Trevor. You turned me into someone who was too afraid to respect herself. That ends today." I pulled out the envelope I had prepared that morning and set it on the kitchen counter. "I'm moving out today. My lawyer will contact yours tomorrow. I don't want your money, your house, your cars, or anything else. I just want out." "You're making a huge mistake," he said, his voice turning threatening. "You think you can survive out there on your own? You'll come crawling back within a month and I won't be as generous then. I guess we'll find out." I picked up my purse and the suitcase I had packed while he was sleeping. I had taken only my clothes, my laptop, my grandmother's jewelry, and my personal documents. Everything else could stay. Where are you even going? He demanded. That's not your concern anymore. Natasha, don't be stupid. You're throwing away 5 years for what? Because your feelings are hurt? Grow up. I turned back to look at him one last time. You're right about one thing. I did give up 5 years. 5 years of my life supporting someone who saw me as decoration. But that's done now. And Trevor? You're about to find out that the woman you thought was helpless and dependent? She never existed. You just convinced me to play that role. I'm done acting. I walked out of the penthouse, and the sound of the door closing behind me was the sweetest thing I'd ever heard. Rita was waiting for me outside in her car, just like she'd promised when I called her at 5 that morning. You really did it, she said as I got in. I really did. Where to? Your place if the offer still stands. Just for a few days until I find my own apartment. You can stay as long as you need. Are you okay? I looked back at the building where I'd lived for 5 years. The doorman who always greeted me, the marble lobby, the private elevator. All of it was beautiful and empty, just like my marriage had been. I'm better than okay, I said. I'm free. My phone started ringing. Trevor. I declined the call. He called again. I declined again. Then the text started coming. You're being childish. This is ridiculous. Come home so we can talk like adults. You're embarrassing yourself. Fine. Be stubborn. You'll regret this. I blocked his number. Rita glanced at me. What did he say? Nothing that matters. We drove to Rita's house in Brooklyn. It was smaller than what I was used to, but it was filled with real warmth. Her husband Jerome was making breakfast when we arrived. I made extra, he said, giving me a hug. Rita told me what happened. You're welcome here as long as you need. Thank you. I'll find my own place this week. Take your time, Rita said. We have a guest room that nobody uses. Over breakfast, I laid out my plan. I have $200,000 from my grandmother. Trevor doesn't know about it. I'm going to use it to start over. What will you do? Jerome asked. I'm going back to what I'm good at. Business consulting. I've been out of the game for 5 years, but I still have my degree, my brain, and I've spent the last 5 years networking with some of the most powerful people in this city. I know their businesses. I know their problems. I can help them. Rita looked worried. It's a good plan, but it's been 5 years. Will they take you seriously? They will if I prove I can solve their problems. I need to rebuild my reputation and I need to do it fast. I can't survive on $200,000 forever. Jerome nodded thoughtfully. I have a friend who runs a small tech company. They're struggling with their business model. Maybe you could consult with them? It wouldn't pay much at first, but it would be a start. That would be perfect. I'll make a call today. After breakfast, I started looking for apartments online. Nothing too expensive, nothing too far from the business district. I needed to be smart with my money. Rita sat next to me. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why didn't you fight for anything in the divorce? The prenup might say one thing, but you could still go after some of his assets. You were married for 5 years. Because I don't want to be tied to him anymore. If I take his money, he'll always hold it over me. He'll always say that I needed him. I want to build something that's completely mine. Something he can't touch or claim or take credit for. That's going to be hard. I know. But it's going to be worth it. My phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Natasha, it's Patricia. Trevor's mother. I just spoke with Trevor. What on earth is going on? Good morning, Patricia. Trevor and I are getting divorced. Divorced? But why? You two seemed so happy at the gala. Appearances can be deceiving. I'm sorry, but I'd rather not discuss the details. Is there another man? Her voice turned cold. No. This is between Trevor and me. He said you just walked out over nothing. That you're being irrational. I took a deep breath. Patricia, with all respect, Trevor is lying. But I'm not going to get into a fight with you about this. I've always appreciated your kindness, but this marriage is over. You're making a terrible mistake. My son is a catch. Then I'm sure Adriana will be very happy with him. There was a long silence. Who is Adriana? Ask your son. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking. Patricia had always been kind to me, and ending that relationship hurt. But I couldn't let anyone make me doubt my decision. Rita handed me a cup of tea. That sounded rough. She thinks I'm being irrational. Trevor's already spinning the story to make me look crazy. Let him spin. The truth will come out eventually. I don't care if it does or not. I just want to move forward. I spent the rest of the day apartment hunting online, updating my resume and reaching out to old contacts from college. Some people responded with surprise. Others didn't respond at all. But a few reached out with genuine interest in catching up. By evening, Jerome's friend had called. His name was Brandon, and he ran a small software company that was struggling to compete with bigger firms. Jerome says you're good at business strategy, Brandon said on the phone. I am. Tell me about your company. We talked for an hour. By the end of the call, I had identified 3 major problems with his business model and proposed solutions for each one. How much would you charge to consult with us for 3 months? Brandon asked. $15,000. That's less than I expected. I'm rebuilding my reputation. If I help you succeed, you'll recommend me to others. That's worth more than money right now. Deal. When can you start? Tomorrow. After I hung up, Rita hugged me. You got your first client. It's a start. That night, I lay in Rita's guest room staring at the ceiling. I had walked away from a penthouse to sleep on a borrowed bed. I had left a man who gave me unlimited money to start over with limited savings. I had given up security for freedom. And I didn't regret a single second of it. My phone buzzed one more time. Another unknown number. This time it was Adriana. Hello. Natasha, this is Adriana. We need to talk. We don't need to do anything. Trevor told me what happened. I think you should know that he loves you. He made a mistake, but... Stop. I don't need your opinion on my marriage or my divorce. Stay out of my life. You're being unreasonable. Trevor is a good man. Then you keep him. I'm done. I hung up and blocked her number too. Let them have each other. Let them build their life on lies and betrayal. I was going to build mine on truth and hard work. As I fell asleep, I thought about Trevor's words at the gala. He said I was nothing without him. He said I couldn't survive on my own. He said I was just decoration. Tomorrow I would start proving him wrong. And I wouldn't stop until everyone knew that Natasha Hart was more than just someone's wife. I was about to become someone he could never dream of being. 3 weeks after leaving Trevor, I had my first real test. Brandon's company was even worse off than he'd described. Their software was outdated, their marketing was non-existent, and they were hemorrhaging money. Most consultants would have told him to shut down and start over. But I saw something else. I saw potential. I worked 16-hour days analyzing their business, meeting with their small team and completely restructuring their approach. Instead of trying to compete with the big companies directly, I helped them find a niche market, small medical offices that needed affordable, customizable software. We can't afford to develop new software, Brandon said during one of our meetings. You don't need to. Your existing software can be modified. It's actually better suited for smaller clients than the big players. You just need to rebrand and redirect your marketing. That's going to take time. Everything worth doing takes time. But if you do this right, you'll have a sustainable business in 6 months. I also helped them cut costs without cutting staff, renegotiated their vendor contracts, and created a marketing strategy that cost almost nothing but reached exactly the right people. By the end of 3 months, Brandon's company had signed 12 new clients. They weren't out of the woods yet, but they were stable. You saved my business, Brandon said when our contract ended. How can I repay you? Recommend me to anyone who needs help. That's all I need. He did more than that. He wrote a testimonial that I could use, introduced me to 3 other struggling business owners, and told everyone in his network about the consultant who had turned his company around. My phone started ringing. While I worked with Brandon, I had also found an apartment. It was tiny, just a studio in Queens, but it was mine. I bought furniture from discount stores and decorated with plants and prints that I actually liked instead of whatever designer Trevor's decorator had chosen. Rita helped me move in. It's small, she said diplomatically. It's perfect, I corrected. It's mine. Nobody can tell me to leave. Nobody can take it away. It's mine. You really are happy, aren't you? I'm happier than I've been in years. The divorce was moving forward slowly. Trevor's lawyer kept trying to delay things, probably hoping I would give up or come back. But my lawyer, a sharp woman named Rachel who Rita had recommended, kept pushing forward. He's going to try to make this difficult, Rachel warned me during one meeting. Men like Trevor hate losing control. Even though the prenup is clear, he might try to claim you're entitled to nothing because you left him. Let him try. Are you sure you don't want to fight for alimony? You're entitled to something. I'm sure. I want this over as fast as possible. Trevor tried to contact me several times through friends and acquaintances. He showed up at Rita's house once, but Jerome turned him away. He sent flowers to Brandon's office, which I threw in the trash. The message was always the same. Come back. We can work this out. You're making a mistake. I never responded. My second and third consulting clients came through Brandon's recommendations. One was a struggling restaurant that needed help with their business model. The other was a small fashion boutique that was drowning in debt. I helped the restaurant owner realize she was trying to be too many things at once. We simplified her menu, focused on her strengths, and increased her prices. Within 2 months, she was profitable. The boutique owner needed to stop competing with fast fashion and focus on sustainable, locally made pieces. It meant a complete rebrand, but it worked. Her sales tripled. Each success led to more referrals. Each referral led to more work. I was building something real. 6 months after leaving Trevor, I had saved $50,000 from my consulting fees. It wasn't much compared to what I'd had access to as his wife, but it was mine. Every dollar represented hours of my work, my ideas, my effort. I celebrated by buying myself a good laptop and a professional wardrobe. Nothing designer, nothing flashy, but quality pieces that made me feel confident. Rita took me out to dinner. Look at you. 6 months ago you were terrified. Now you're running your own consulting business. I'm not running anything yet. I'm just doing contract work. It's more than that, and you know it. You're building something. Have you thought about making it official? Starting an actual company? I had thought about it. Late at night in my studio apartment, I had made plans and sketches and lists. But I was cautious. I need more capital. I need more clients. You need to believe in yourself as much as everyone else believes in you. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Rita's words. I had been playing it safe, taking small jobs, building slowly. But was I playing it safe because it was smart or because I was still afraid? Trevor had told me I was nothing without him. Even though I had walked away, even though I was surviving, part of me still believed him. Part of me was still waiting to fail. I got out of bed and opened my laptop. I started writing a business plan for a real consulting firm. Not just me taking odd jobs, but a legitimate company that could hire employees, take on bigger clients, make a real impact. Art Consulting. That would be the name. Simple. Strong. Mine. By morning, I had a 30-page business plan. It was rough, but it was real. I needed $100,000 to make it work: office space, licenses, insurance, hiring one assistant, marketing. I had $50,000 saved. I needed to find the rest. I called Brandon. I need advice. About what? Starting my own firm. I have half the capital I need. Where do I find the rest? Bank loan? They'll want collateral. I don't have any. What about investors? I hadn't considered that. Investors meant giving up part of my company, but it also meant growing faster. Do you know anyone who might be interested? Actually, yes. Remember those 12 clients I signed? One of them is doing really well. Her name is Colette. She made her money in tech and now she invests in small businesses, especially women-owned businesses. Let me make an introduction. 2 days later, I met Colette Rivera at a coffee shop in Manhattan. She was in her 50s, sharply dressed, and had a direct way of speaking that I appreciated immediately. Brandon says you're good, she said, skipping pleasantries. I am. Why did you stop working 5 years ago? I got married. My husband wanted me to focus on supporting his career. And now I'm divorced and building my own career. She smiled. Good answer. Show me your business plan. I handed her my laptop. She read in silence for 20 minutes while I tried not to fidget. Finally, she looked up. This is solid. Really solid. You've thought through everything: market analysis, competition, growth projections. You're asking for $50,000? Yes. I have the other 50 myself. I'll give you $75,000 for 20% of the company. I did the math quickly. That was more money than I'd asked for, but it meant giving up more ownership. 20% is high. It is. But the extra $25,000 will let you hire better staff and get better office space. You'll grow faster. That extra growth will be worth more than the 5% difference. She was right. Deal. But I maintain majority ownership and final say on all major decisions. Of course. I'm an investor, not a boss. I invest in people I trust to run their own companies. We shook hands. I had a partner. I had capital. I had everything I needed to build Hart Consulting into something real. Trevor's lawyer called Rachel later that week. He wanted to settle the divorce quickly. Apparently, Trevor was getting impatient with the process. He's agreed to all our terms, Rachel said, sounding surprised. No fight, no negotiation. He just wants it done. Perfect. Natasha, this is unusual. Usually men like him drag these things out. He's giving up very easily. Maybe he's just ready to move on. What I didn't say was that I didn't care why Trevor had agreed. I just wanted it finished. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday morning in October. 7 months after I walked out of the penthouse, I was officially free. Rachel handed me the papers. Congratulations. You're single. Thank you for everything. You're welcome. And Natasha? You should be proud. Most women in your position would have fought for money. You fought for freedom instead. That takes courage. I left the courthouse and walked through the city. It was a beautiful fall day, the kind of day that made New York feel magical. I was 32 years old, divorced, living in a studio apartment, and starting a business with no guarantee it would succeed. I had never been happier. I called Rita. It's done. The divorce is final. How do you feel? Like I can finally breathe. That evening, I signed the papers to officially establish Hart Consulting as an LLC. I signed a lease on a small office space in Midtown. I hired my first employee, a recent business school graduate named Olivia, who was smart, hungry, and reminded me of myself 10 years ago. Everything was falling into place. I thought about Trevor sometimes, usually late at night when I couldn't sleep. I wondered if he regretted what he'd done. I wondered if Adriana was still with him. I wondered if he ever thought about the wife he'd thrown away. But those thoughts never lasted long. I had too much to do. Too much to build. Too much to prove. Not to him. I didn't need to prove anything to Trevor Blackwood. I needed to prove it to myself. The first year of Hart Consulting was harder than anything I had ever done. My office was 300 square feet in a building that had seen better days. The elevator broke once a week, the heat was inconsistent, and my desk was from a furniture liquidation sale. But it was mine. Olivia turned out to be a perfect hire. She was 24, fresh out of business school, and willing to work twice as hard as anyone else because she had something to prove, just like me. Why did you hire me? She asked during her first week. I saw the other candidates. They had more experience. Experience isn't everything. I need someone hungry. Someone who wants to build something. That's you. We worked side by side, often staying until midnight. I taught her everything I knew about business consulting: how to analyze a company, how to identify problems, how to propose solutions that clients would actually implement. She taught me about social media marketing and digital strategies that I'd never needed to know as Trevor's wife. Our first real test came 3 months after opening, when we landed a client that was too big for us. Sterling Heights Property Management wanted to restructure their entire operation. They had 50 employees, managed 300 properties, and were losing money despite high occupancy rates. The contract was worth $75,000 more than any other job we'd done. Can we handle this? Olivia asked nervously. We have to. If we pull this off, it will establish us as a serious firm. For 6 weeks, we practically lived at their office. I analyzed their operations, interviewed their staff, reviewed their contracts, and identified the problems. They were overbuilt in areas that didn't generate revenue and underbuilt in areas that did. Their maintenance system was inefficient. Their tenant screening was costing them money in evictions and damages. I presented my findings to their board on a Wednesday afternoon. 10 executives sat around a conference table, looking skeptical. I was a small firm they'd hired on a recommendation. They expected a basic report. Instead, I gave them a complete restructuring plan that would save them $2 million annually. You want us to cut our property management staff by 30%? One board member asked incredulously. No. I want you to redistribute them. You have too many people doing administrative work and not enough doing maintenance and tenant relations. If you shift your staffing model, you'll actually reduce tenant complaints by half while saving money. What about our vendor contracts? You're overpaying for everything because you're using too many vendors. Consolidate. Negotiate volume discounts. I've already contacted 3 vendors who would give you better rates. And our screening process? It's too loose. You're accepting tenants who look good on paper but have red flags you're missing. Tighten your criteria, and you'll reduce evictions by 70%. The room was silent. Then the CEO leaned forward. If we implement all of this, how long before we see results? 6 months for the full effect. But you'll see improvements within 60 days. And if it doesn't work? Then you don't pay my final installment. Put it in the contract. Results or nothing. That got their attention. Consultants never offered that kind of guarantee. The CEO smiled. You've got guts. Let's do it. Implementing the changes was brutal. Some staff members resisted. Some vendors were angry about losing contracts. But Olivia and I worked alongside their team, troubleshooting every problem, adjusting strategies when needed, and proving that the plan would work. 60 days later, Sterling Heights sent me an email. Tenant complaints were down 40%. Maintenance costs were down 20%. 3 properties that had been struggling were now thriving. The CEO called me personally. I've been in this business for 30 years. I've hired a dozen consultants. You're the first one who actually delivered what you promised. We want to hire you for our expansion project. That expansion project was worth $200,000. When I told Olivia, she screamed so loud that our neighbor came to check if everything was okay. We did it, she said, hugging me. We actually did it. No, we're just getting started. With that contract, I hired 2 more consultants, both experienced professionals who were tired of working for big firms and wanted to be part of something smaller and more personal. I moved us to a better office, still modest but professional. I bought real furniture, not liquidation sale items. Hart Consulting was growing. I had been divorced for 14 months when I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Natasha, it's Colette. Is everything okay? Better than okay. I'm calling because I want to introduce you to someone. His name is Richard Thompson. He runs a private equity firm, and he's looking for a consultant to evaluate potential acquisitions. It's a 6-month contract worth $500,000. I nearly dropped my phone. $500,000? I know it's a big jump, but you're ready. I've been watching how you've grown Hart Consulting. You're doing everything right. This is your next step. What's the catch? She laughed. No catch. Richard is cautious about who he works with, so he'll want to meet you first. But I've already talked you up. The meeting is a formality. 2 days later, I sat across from Richard Thompson in his office on the 40th floor of a building in Lower Manhattan. He was in his 60s, distinguished looking, and had the kind of presence that came from decades of success. Colette says you're the best consultant she's invested in, he said. Colette is generous. She's not known for generosity. She's known for accuracy. Tell me about your approach to business analysis. I spent an hour explaining my methodology. I didn't try to impress him with jargon or complicated theories. I just told him the truth. I looked at businesses the way most people didn't. I found the gaps between what they said they did and what they actually did. I identified waste, inefficiency, and missed opportunities. Give me an example, he said. Your portfolio includes a chain of dry cleaners. He raised an eyebrow. How did you know that? I researched your firm before this meeting. You acquired them 2 years ago and they're underperforming. I drove past 3 of their locations yesterday. I saw the same problem at all 3. Which is? They're located in commercial areas with foot traffic during the day, but they close at 6. Most of their potential customers work until 5 or 6 and can't drop off dry cleaning during business hours. If you extended their hours until 8 and opened on Sundays, you'd increase revenue by at least 30%. Richard stared at me for a long moment. Then he smiled. You're hired. When can you start? Working with Richard's firm was different from anything I'd done before. Instead of helping one struggling business, I was evaluating dozens of potential acquisitions. I traveled constantly, visiting businesses across the country, analyzing their operations and writing detailed reports on whether they were worth buying. I hired 3 more consultants to handle our existing clients while I focused on this contract. I rented a bigger office. I started paying myself a real salary instead of just covering expenses. 20 months after leaving Trevor, Hart Consulting had 12 employees and was bringing in $2 million annually. We had a waiting list of clients. I moved out of my studio in Queens and into a 1-bedroom apartment in Manhattan. It wasn't a penthouse, but it was mine. I decorated it exactly how I wanted: bright colors, comfortable furniture, books everywhere, plants on every surface. Rita came to visit and walked around in amazement. This is incredible. You did all of this yourself. With a lot of help from good people. Stop being modest. 2 years ago, Trevor told you that you were nothing without him. Look at you now. I looked around my apartment. My degree was framed on the wall. I'd taken it out of storage and hung it with pride. On my desk was a stack of contracts from clients waiting for our services. On my coffee table was a business magazine with a small feature about emerging women-owned businesses. Hart Consulting was mentioned. I'm proud of what I've built, I said. But I'm not done. This is just the beginning. What's next? I want to expand. I want to hire more people, take on bigger clients, maybe open a second office. You're amazing. You know that, right? I hugged her. I know I'm persistent. That's different. The divorce had been final for over a year, but sometimes I still had moments where I thought about Trevor. Not with longing or regret, but with a strange detachment, like remembering a person I used to know in another life. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he and Adriana had moved in together. I heard his company was doing well. I heard he never talked about me. Good. I didn't talk about him either. My life was full of work, friends, and purpose. I didn't have time for romance and I didn't want it. I had spent 5 years being someone's wife. Now I was focused on being myself. Olivia got engaged that spring. She was so excited, showing everyone her ring, planning her wedding, talking about her future. Are you happy? I asked her during lunch one day. Incredibly. Jordan is nothing like the guys I dated before. He actually supports my career. He's proud of what I do. That's how it should be. Do you think you'll date again? Maybe eventually. But not now. I'm too busy building my empire. She laughed. Your empire is already built. No. This is just the foundation. That summer, Hart Consulting signed the biggest contract in our history, a year-long consulting agreement with a Fortune 500 company that needed help restructuring their supply chain. The contract was worth $3 million. I hired 10 more employees to handle the workload. We moved to a bigger office with views of the city. I started turning down small clients so we could focus on larger, more complex projects. 2 years after leaving Trevor with nothing but my grandmother's money and my determination, Hart Consulting was worth $20 million. I bought my first designer dress since the divorce, not because I needed to impress anyone, but because I wanted to. I wore it to a business dinner where I was being honored as one of the city's top entrepreneurs under 40. As I stood on the stage accepting the award, I looked out at the audience. Business leaders, investors, other entrepreneurs. People who saw me as someone who had built something real. Not Trevor's wife. Not decoration. Not helpless. Just Natasha Hart. Geo. Success story. Empire builder. This was just the beginning. The Fortune 500 contract changed everything. Suddenly, Hart Consulting wasn't just a small firm doing good work. We were a serious player in the business consulting world. My phone rang constantly with inquiries from companies that had heard about our success. I was careful about which clients we took on. I learned early that saying no to the wrong clients was just as important as saying yes to the right ones. We only worked with companies that genuinely wanted to improve, not ones that were hiring consultants just to check a box. The work was demanding. I traveled 3 weeks out of every month, visiting manufacturing facilities, distribution centers, and corporate headquarters. I missed Rita's birthday party. I missed Olivia's wedding, though I sent a generous gift and apologized profusely. I missed normal life. But I didn't miss my old life. Not for a second. One evening, I was working late in my office when my assistant knocked on the door. Her name was Monica, and I'd hired her 6 months earlier to manage my increasingly chaotic schedule. There's someone here to see you, she said. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's urgent. Who is it? She handed me a business card. My stomach dropped. It was Trevor's business card. Tell him I'm not available. I tried. He said he'll wait as long as it takes. I considered having security remove him, but that would cause a scene. Better to deal with this quickly and be done with it. Fine. Give me 5 minutes, then send him in. I used those 5 minutes to steady myself. I hadn't seen Trevor in over 2 years. I had successfully avoided every event where I might run into him. I had built a life where he simply didn't exist. And now he was in my office. When Monica showed him in, I was shocked by how he looked. Trevor had always been impeccably dressed, confident, and commanding. The man who walked through my door looked tired. His suit was still expensive, but it was wrinkled. His hair needed cutting. There were shadows under his eyes. Hello, Natasha, he said. Trevor. You have 10 minutes. He looked around my office, taking in the view, the furniture, the framed awards on my wall. You've done well for yourself. Is that what you came to say? No. I came to apologize. That surprised me. You're 2 years too late. I know. But I need to say it anyway. I was cruel to you. I was arrogant. I took you for granted, and I destroyed something good because I thought I could. And now you want forgiveness? I want you to know that I was wrong. About everything. You weren't helpless or dependent. You weren't just decoration. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I threw you away. I leaned back in my chair, studying him. What happened to Adriana? She left me 8 months ago. Turned out she was only interested in my money. When my company started having problems, she found someone wealthier. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I see. And now you're here because I wanted to see you. I wanted to tell you that I was wrong. And he hesitated. I wanted to ask if there was any chance we could start over. The audacity of it took my breath away. Start over? I know it's a lot to ask. But we were good together once. We could be good together again. I've changed, Natasha. Losing you taught me. Stop. I stood up. Let me make something very clear. We were never good together. I was good to you. I supported you, managed your life, made you look better than you deserved to look. You gave me nothing but contempt and betrayal. That's not fair. I gave you a beautiful prison. Yes, I know. I've heard this speech before. But here's what you don't understand, Trevor. I don't want to start over with you. I don't want anything to do with you. I have built a life that is infinitely better than the one I had as your wife. You can't mean that. We had something special. We had something toxic. And I'm grateful every single day that I had the courage to leave it. He stood up, his face flushing red. You think you're better than me now because you have some success? This company of yours is nothing compared to what I built. You're right. Your company is bigger than mine. It's worth more money, has more employees, makes more revenue. But it's falling apart, isn't it? That's why you're really here. You need help. He didn't deny it. My business partner found some irregularities in our finances. There's going to be an audit. I thought maybe you could help me prepare. There it was. The real reason for his visit. You want to hire me? We could help each other. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Trevor, I wouldn't consult for your company if you offered me $10 million. In fact, I would pay money to not have to work with you. You're being vindictive. No, I'm being smart. Working with you would be bad for my reputation and bad for my mental health. The answer is no. It will always be no. You can't still be angry about what happened. It's been 2 years. I'm not angry. I'm indifferent. You're nothing to me, Trevor. You're not my husband. You're not my friend. You're not my client. You're just someone I used to know who wasted 5 years of my life. And now you're wasting 10 minutes of my time. I made you who you are, he said, his voice turning nasty. You would be nothing without what I taught you. What you taught me was how much I could tolerate before I snapped. You taught me that I was stronger than I thought. You taught me that I didn't need anyone who didn't respect me. So yes, Trevor, you did teach me something valuable. You taught me exactly who I never want to be. I pressed the button on my desk phone. Monica, please have security escort Mr. Blackwood out of the building. And add him to the list of people who are not welcome here. You'll regret this, Trevor said as Monica appeared at the door. The only thing I regret is not leaving you sooner. Security arrived and escorted him out. He went without causing a scene, which was probably the most dignified thing he'd done in years. After he left, I sat at my desk for a long time, my hands shaking. Monica brought me tea without being asked. Are you okay? She asked. I'm perfect. And I was. Seeing Trevor hadn't hurt the way I'd feared it might. It had just confirmed what I already knew. I had made the right choice. He was still the same arrogant, self-centered man he'd always been. The only difference was that his mask had slipped, and now everyone could see what I'd seen 2 years ago. That night, I called Rita and told her what happened. He actually asked you to take him back, she said, incredulous, and to help him with his business problems. The nerve of that man. What did you say? I told him no, very firmly, and I had security throw him out. Rita laughed so hard she snorted. I wish I'd been there to see his face. It was satisfying. Are you okay though? Really? I'm better than okay. I realized today that I don't feel anything for him anymore. Not anger, not hurt, nothing. He's just irrelevant. That's growth. That's freedom. The next morning, I got a call from Richard Thompson. I heard you had an interesting visitor yesterday, he said. How did you hear about that? Trevor Blackwood and I know some of the same people. He's been calling around trying to find a consultant who can help him deal with his audit situation. Several people recommended you. He told them you refused. I did. Good. His company is a mess. Anyone who touches that situation is going to get pulled into his legal problems. I'm glad you had the sense to stay away. Is it really that bad? Worse. The audit is going to reveal some serious financial misconduct. He's going to be lucky if he doesn't end up in legal trouble. I should have felt satisfaction hearing that Trevor was facing consequences for his actions. Instead, I just felt tired. That's unfortunate. You don't sound happy about it. I'm not happy or unhappy. I just don't care. He's not my problem anymore. That's a healthy attitude. By the way, I'm calling for another reason. I want to offer you a seat on my company's advisory board. It's a part-time position, but it would give you exposure to some major players in the business world. I'd be honored. Good. We meet quarterly. I'll have my assistant send you the details. Joining Richard's advisory board opened doors I hadn't even known existed. I met CEOs, investors, and entrepreneurs who were building businesses worth hundreds of millions. I learned strategies I'd never encountered before. I expanded my network exponentially. Hart Consulting continued to grow. We landed 3 more Fortune 500 clients. I hired a COO to manage operations so I could focus on strategy and business development. We opened a second office in Chicago. 3 years after leaving Trevor, my company was valued at $50 million. I got offers to sell. Private equity firms wanted to acquire Hart Consulting. Larger consulting firms wanted to merge with us. Every offer was generous. I turned them all down. Why? Olivia asked. Some of these offers would make you incredibly wealthy. I'm already wealthy. More importantly, I'm independent. If I sell, I lose control. I lose the ability to make decisions about how we operate and who we serve. I didn't build this company just to hand it over to someone else. So you're going to keep growing? Until I can't anymore. And then I'll figure out what comes next. That summer, I bought a house in Connecticut. It wasn't a mansion like Trevor's penthouse had been, but it was perfect. 3 bedrooms, a garden, a view of the water. I could work from home when I needed to, and I could disconnect completely when I wanted to. I threw a housewarming party and invited everyone who had helped me get to where I was. Rita and Jerome, Colette, Richard, Brandon, all of my employees. We filled the house with laughter and food and celebration. Look at what you've built, Rita said, standing on my deck overlooking the water. Not just the business. This life. This home. These friendships. You built all of this from nothing. Not from nothing. From determination. Same thing. I looked around at all the people who had supported me, believed in me, and helped me become the person I was meant to be. Trevor had told me I was nothing without him. These people had shown me I was everything without him. My phone buzzed with a text from Monica. Magazine wants to do a feature on Hart Consulting. They're calling it, The Consultant Who Built an Empire. I smiled. An empire. That's exactly what it was. And I had built it one decision, one client, one success at a time. Without Trevor. Without his money. Without his name or his connections. Just me. The magazine feature came out in September, 4 years after I'd left Trevor. The article was 7 pages long with photos of me in my office, meeting with clients and standing on my deck overlooking the water. The headline read, From Billionaire's Wife to Self-Made Success, How Natasha Hart Built a $50 million Empire. I hated the headline. It still defined me in relation to Trevor, as if being his wife was the most interesting thing about me. But the article itself was fair. It talked about my business degree, my consulting methodology, and how Hart Consulting had become one of the fastest growing firms in the industry. The journalist had asked about Trevor. I kept my answer brief. My marriage ended and I decided to rebuild my career. That's all there is to it. She'd pressed for details, but I refused. I don't discuss my personal life. This article is about my business. The day the magazine came out, my phone exploded with messages. Former clients congratulating me. New potential clients wanting to hire us. Reporters asking for interviews. Even some of Trevor's old associates reached out, pretending they'd always believed in me. Rita sent me a photo of herself holding the magazine. You're famous. I'm not famous. I'm just getting attention. Same thing. Enjoy it. I tried to enjoy it, but mostly I felt exposed. I had built my business quietly, taking satisfaction in the work itself rather than the recognition. Now everyone was looking at me, judging me, forming opinions about my life. Colette called that evening. Have you seen the online comments on the article? No. Should I? Probably not. People are saying terrible things. Some are claiming you only succeeded because you used Trevor's connections. Others are saying you must have gotten money from him despite the divorce. A few are even suggesting there was never really an affair and you made it all up for sympathy. My stomach turned. Why would anyone care enough to say those things? Because people are cruel, especially to successful women. Ignore them. You know the truth. But ignoring them was harder than I expected. That night, I made the mistake of reading the comments. Most were supportive, but the negative ones cut deep. She probably slept her way to the top. There's no way she built a $50 million company in 4 years without help. Sounds like a gold digger who's mad she didn't get more in the divorce. I closed my laptop and poured myself a glass of wine. I knew these comments came from people who didn't know me, who didn't understand what I'd built or how hard I'd worked. But they still hurt. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but I answered anyway. Natasha, this is Patricia Blackwood, Trevor's mother. I hadn't spoken to her since the day I told her I was divorcing her son. Hello, Patricia. I saw the magazine article. I wanted to call and say I'm sorry. That surprised me. Sorry for what? For not believing you. When you told me about Adriana, I thought you were being dramatic. Trevor convinced me you were having some kind of crisis. But I know the truth now. He did cheat on you. He was cruel to you. And you left with grace and dignity while he fell apart. I appreciate you saying that. I also wanted you to know that I'm proud of what you've built. Trevor told me you wouldn't survive without him. He was wrong. Thank you. One more thing. Trevor is in serious trouble. The audit revealed major financial irregularities. There may be criminal charges. If anyone asks you about it, you have every right to say nothing. I wasn't planning to say anything. I know. You have class. More than my son ever did. Take care, Natasha. After she hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. Patricia's call meant more to me than I'd expected. She was one of the few people from my old life who I genuinely liked, and having her acknowledgement felt like closing a door that had been left slightly ajar. The next morning, I got a call from my lawyer, Rachel. Trevor's lawyer reached out, she said. Apparently there's a prosecutor looking into Trevor's business dealings. They want to know if you have any information about his finances during your marriage. I don't. He never discussed business with me. That was part of the problem. That's what I told them. But they may want to interview you anyway. Fine. I'll tell them the truth. I know nothing about his business. The interview happened 2 weeks later. A prosecutor and an FBI agent asked me questions for 3 hours. Did I know about offshore accounts? Did I know about falsified documents? Did I know about investors who were defrauded? To every question my answer was the same, no. My husband didn't discuss business with me. They seemed disappointed but accepted my answers. As I was leaving, the prosecutor stopped me. Ms. Hart, your divorce was finalized 3 years ago. You walked away with nothing. Why? Because I didn't want to be tied to him anymore. That's unusual. So is walking away from a billionaire to build your own empire. But here we are. She smiled slightly. You're right. Good luck with your business. The investigation into Trevor's company dominated the news for months. It turned out he had been hiding losses, inflating revenue, and misleading investors for years. His business partner was cooperating with prosecutors in exchange for a lighter sentence. Trevor was facing multiple felony charges. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt nothing. Trevor's downfall had nothing to do with me. I hadn't caused it by leaving. I hadn't contributed to it with testimony. His own actions had destroyed him. Meanwhile, Hart Consulting kept growing. We signed our first international client, a European manufacturing company that needed help restructuring their U.S. operations. I hired consultants who spoke multiple languages and understood international business. We expanded to a third office in Los Angeles. We developed proprietary software to help with our analysis work. We started offering training programs for other consultants who wanted to learn our methodology. 5 years after leaving Trevor, Hart Consulting was valued at $100 million. I was sitting in my office reviewing contracts when Olivia knocked on my door. She was my VP of operations now, managing a team of 30 consultants. There's someone here to see you, she said. You're not going to believe who it is. Tell me it's not Trevor. It's not. It's Adriana. I stared at her. Are you serious? She says she needs to talk to you. I can send her away if you want. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to have security escort her out immediately, the same way I'd done with Trevor. But I was curious. What could Adriana possibly have to say to me? Give me 5 minutes, then send her in. When Adriana walked through my door, I barely recognized her. The polished, confident woman who had mocked me at the charity gala was gone. She looked thin, tired, and defeated. Thank you for seeing me, she said. You have 10 minutes. I came to apologize. For everything. For the affair, for the things I said about you, for how I treated you. I was wrong. Okay. She seemed surprised by my lack of reaction. That's it? Just okay? What do you want me to say? That I forgive you? That I understand? I don't care enough about you to forgive or understand. You were a mistake that Trevor made, and both of you are irrelevant to my life now. I know you probably think I got what I deserved. I left Trevor for someone with more money and then he left me. Now I have nothing. Why are you telling me this? Because I need a job. I heard you're hiring consultants and I have business experience. I thought maybe. No. Please, Natasha. I'm desperate. I can't find work anywhere. Trevor's situation has made me toxic. Nobody will hire me. That's not my problem. I know I don't deserve your help. But I'm asking anyway. I stood up. Let me be very clear. I would never hire you. Not because I'm vindictive, but because I wouldn't trust you. You showed me exactly who you were 5 years ago. People who betray others don't suddenly become trustworthy just because they're desperate. So that's it? You're just going to let me struggle? Yes. The same way you were happy to watch me struggle when you were sleeping with my husband. You made your choices. Now live with them. Tears filled her eyes. I made a mistake. Multiple mistakes. And they were all yours to make. Now leave my office. After Adriana left, I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, no anger. She was just another person from my past who had no place in my future. That evening, I met Rita for dinner. I told her about both visits, Patricia's call and Adriana's visit. You handled both situations perfectly, Rita said. I just told the truth. That's what I mean. You didn't gloat. You didn't try to get revenge. You just stated facts and moved on. That's real strength. Trevor and Adriana destroyed each other. I didn't need to do anything. Exactly. The best revenge is living well. And you're living incredibly well. 6 months later, I received news that Trevor had pleaded guilty to multiple counts of fraud. He was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison and ordered to pay restitution to investors. His company was liquidated to pay his debts. I read the article about his sentencing once, then never thought about it again. My life had moved so far beyond Trevor Blackwood that his downfall barely registered. I was too busy building my empire, traveling the world for clients, and creating opportunities for the people who worked for me. Hart Consulting had become exactly what I'd envisioned that night in Rita's guest room 5 years earlier. A company that solved real problems for real clients. A place where talented people could grow and succeed. A business that bore my name and reflected my values. I had built something that would last long after I was gone. And I had done it all on my own terms. 7 years after leaving Trevor, I was invited to speak at a business conference in Chicago. The conference was one of the biggest in the country, attracting thousands of entrepreneurs, investors, and business leaders. I had been asked to give a keynote speech about building a successful consulting firm from the ground up. I almost said no. Public speaking had never been my favorite thing, and the attention made me uncomfortable. But Olivia convinced me to accept. This is a huge opportunity, she said. Half the people at that conference are potential clients. The other half are people who could learn from your story. So I accepted. The speech was scheduled for the second day of the conference. I arrived the night before and checked into my hotel room, reviewing my notes and trying to calm my nerves. The next morning, I stood backstage waiting to be introduced. The conference hall held 3,000 people. My hands were sweating despite the air conditioning. The moderator introduced me. Please welcome Natasha Hart, founder and CEO of Hart Consulting, one of the fastest-growing business consulting firms in the country. I walked onto the stage to applause and stood behind the podium, looking out at thousands of faces. Good morning. My name is Natasha Hart, and 7 years ago, I had nothing. For the next 45 minutes, I told my story. Not all of it. I didn't mention Trevor by name or talk about the affair, but I talked about walking away from a life that looked perfect but felt hollow. I talked about starting over with limited resources. I talked about the fear, the doubt, and the moments when I almost gave up. The hardest part wasn't the work, I said. The hardest part was believing I could do it. I had spent years being told I was nothing without someone else. I had to unlearn that lie before I could build anything real. I talked about my first clients, my first employees, my first major successes and failures. I talked about what it took to build a business that lasted not just hard work, but integrity, consistency, and the courage to say no to opportunities that didn't align with your values. Success isn't about making the most money or having the biggest company, I said. It's about building something that reflects who you are and what you believe in. It's about creating value for others while staying true to yourself. The speech ended with standing ovation. People rushed up afterward to ask questions, exchange business cards, and share their own stories. A young woman, probably in her mid-20s, waited until everyone else had left. Ms. Hart, thank you for your speech. I'm in a situation similar to where you were. I'm married to someone successful and I gave up my career to support him. But I'm realizing that I'm losing myself. How did you find the courage to leave? I looked at her carefully. She reminded me of who I'd been 8 years ago. The courage didn't come all at once. It came in small moments. One day I realized I was asking his permission to live my own life. Another day I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd made a decision on my own. Eventually, those moments added up to a clear truth. I could either stay and disappear, or leave and find out who I really was. What if I can't survive on my own? That's exactly what he wants you to think. But it's not true. You survived before you met him. You'll survive after you leave him. The question is, are you willing to be uncomfortable for a while in exchange for being free forever? She nodded slowly. Thank you. After she left, I stood alone on the empty stage for a moment. Coming here had been the right decision. Not for my business but for moments like that. If my story could help even one person find the courage to change their life, it was worth the discomfort of sharing it. That afternoon, I attended several panel discussions and networking events. At one lunch, I found myself seated next to a man I didn't know. Natasha Hart, he said, extending his hand. I've been hoping to meet you. My name is Daniel Mitchell. I run an investment fund that specializes in women-owned businesses. We talked for 2 hours. Daniel was intelligent, funny, and genuinely interested in Hart Consulting's work. He asked thoughtful questions about our methodology and our growth strategy. Have you ever considered taking your company public? He asked. I've thought about it, but I'm not sure I want to answer to shareholders. That's fair. What if there was a way to access public markets while maintaining control? An IPO with a dual-class share structure, for example. I leaned forward, interested. Tell me more. For the rest of the conference, Daniel and I discussed the possibility of taking Hart Consulting public. It wasn't a decision I could make quickly, but it was intriguing. On my flight home, I researched Daniel's fund and his track record. Everything checked out. He had helped several women-owned businesses go public successfully, and all of them still had their original founders in leadership positions. Maybe it was time to think bigger. Back in New York, I called an executive team meeting. Olivia was there, along with my COO, CFO, and the heads of each of our offices. I want to discuss the possibility of taking Hart Consulting public, I said. The room erupted in discussion. Some were excited. Others were concerned about losing our independence. My CFO presented financial projections showing we could easily meet the requirements for an IPO. The question isn't whether we can, I said. It's whether we should. Going public would give us access to capital we could use to expand. We could open international offices, acquire smaller consulting firms, develop new service lines. But it would also mean more scrutiny, more reporting requirements, and more pressure to prioritize short-term profits over long-term value. What do you think we should do? Olivia asked. I think we should explore the option. Talk to investment banks, understand the process, see what structure makes sense for us. But I won't make this decision alone. This company belongs to all of us now. We'll decide together. Over the next 6 months, we went through the IPO process. We met with investment banks, prepared financial disclosures, and filed preliminary paperwork with the SEC. We debated share structures and governance models. Finally, 8 years after I'd left Trevor with nothing but my grandmother's inheritance, Hart Consulting went public. The IPO was successful beyond anyone's expectations. We had priced our shares at $28. They opened at $42 and closed the first day at $56. Hart Consulting was now worth $800 million. I owned 60% of the company, which meant my personal net worth was about $480 million. I was a billionaire on paper, though the money felt abstract. What mattered more was that we had achieved something remarkable. We had built a company that the market valued, that clients trusted, and that employees were proud to work for. The night of our IPO, I threw a party for everyone who worked at Hart Consulting. We rented out a restaurant and celebrated with champagne and speeches and laughter. Olivia gave a toast. 8 years ago, Natasha took a chance on a recent graduate who had no experience. She taught me everything I know about business. But more importantly, she taught me that success isn't about stepping on others to get ahead. It's about lifting others up while you climb. To Natasha. Everyone raised their glasses. I felt emotion rising in my throat but pushed it down. This wasn't about me. It was about what we had built together. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I stood alone in my office looking out at the city. The light stretched out in every direction, endless and beautiful. My phone buzzed with a text from Rita. You did it. You built your empire. I'm so proud of you. I smiled. She was right. I had done it. Trevor had told me I was nothing without him. He had told me I couldn't survive on my own. He had told me I was just decoration. Now I was worth nearly $500 million. Not because of him. In spite of him. The following week, I got a call from a reporter who wanted to do a follow-up article about Hart Consulting's IPO. There's been some discussion online, she said carefully. Some people are saying that your success is partly due to Trevor Blackwood's legal troubles creating a vacuum in the consulting market. I laughed. That's an interesting theory. But Hart Consulting's first clients came 2 years before Trevor's legal troubles started. Our growth has nothing to do with his downfall. We succeeded because we're good at what we do. Fair enough. How do you feel about Trevor's current situation? I don't feel anything about it. His choices led to his consequences. They have nothing to do with me. Do you ever hear from him? No. And I have no interest in hearing from him. What would you say if he reached out? I'd say nothing. I'd have security escort him out. I said everything I needed to say to Trevor Blackwood 8 years ago. I have nothing to add. The article came out a week later. It was fair and focused on Hart Consulting's success rather than my past. But the comment section was full of speculation about Trevor and our marriage. I made a rule: never read the comments. What other people thought about my life was none of my business. I knew the truth. The people who mattered knew the truth. That was enough. That fall, I received an unexpected invitation. I was invited to join the board of directors of a major technology company. It was a prestigious position that would put me in rooms with some of the most powerful people in business. I accepted immediately. My life had become exactly what I'd imagined that night when I walked out of Trevor's penthouse. I had independence. I had success. I had respect. I had built something that was entirely mine. And the best part? I was just getting started. 9 years after walking out of Trevor's penthouse, I was living a life I couldn't have imagined back then. Hart Consulting now had 500 employees across 6 offices in 3 countries. We were the go-to consulting firm for mid-sized companies that wanted to grow and Fortune 500 companies that needed to restructure. Our annual revenue was $200 million, and we were profitable every quarter. I sat on 3 corporate boards, mentored young entrepreneurs through a program I'd started, and had been named one of the most influential businesswomen in the country by several magazines. But the real measure of my success wasn't in the numbers. It was in the impact we had on our clients and the lives we changed for our employees. I made it a policy that Hart Consulting would only hire people who showed potential, even if they didn't have traditional qualifications. Like Olivia, who I'd hired fresh out of business school and who was now my partner. Like Monica, who had started as my assistant and was now running our Chicago office. Like dozens of others who had come to us with raw talent and left with the skills to build their own success. One morning, I received an email from a woman named Camille Johnson. She explained that she was in a situation similar to mine 9 years ago, married to a wealthy man who controlled everything, feeling like she'd lost herself, wanting to leave but terrified of what came next. I read about your story in a magazine, she wrote. You gave me hope that it's possible to start over. Would you be willing to meet with me? I had received dozens of similar emails over the years. Usually, I sent encouraging responses but didn't meet with people personally. My schedule was too packed. But something about Camille's email touched me. Maybe it was the way she described feeling like she was disappearing, or maybe it was because I remembered exactly what that felt like. I wrote back, "Come to my office next Tuesday at 2 p.m. When Camille arrived, I saw myself from a decade ago. She was beautifully dressed in expensive clothes, but her eyes were tired. She sat across from my desk, wringing her hands nervously. "Thank you for seeing me," she said. "I know you must be incredibly busy. Tell me what's going on." She told me a story I knew too well. A husband who was successful and demanding. Years of putting her career on hold to support his. A growing realization that she had no identity outside of being his wife. Fear that she couldn't survive without him. "Do you have any money of your own?" I asked. "A little. Maybe 20,000. I've been secretly saving from my household budget." "That's smart. Keep saving. What about your career? Did you work before marriage?" "I was a marketing manager. I was good at it. But I haven't worked in 6 years. Your skills aren't gone. They're just dormant. If you decide to leave, you can rebuild. But you have to believe you can first." "How did you know you were ready?" "I didn't know. I was terrified. But I knew staying was worse than the fear of leaving. There came a point where I realized I would rather struggle and be free than be comfortable and be a prisoner." We talked for 2 hours. I gave her practical advice about documenting finances, finding a lawyer, and preparing for independence. I also gave her emotional support, telling her that fear was normal but it shouldn't be paralyzing. "You're not alone," I said. "There are thousands of women who've been where you are and survived. You will too." After she left, I sat thinking about that conversation. I had built a successful business, but moments like these reminded me why I'd built it. Not just to prove Trevor wrong, but to prove to myself that I was more than anyone else's opinion of me. That evening, I had dinner with Daniel Mitchell. Over the past year, we had become friends. He was one of the few men I'd met who seemed genuinely comfortable with my success. He never tried to give me advice I didn't ask for or treat me like I didn't know my own business. "You look thoughtful," he said as we waited for our food. "I met with a woman today who reminded me of where I was 9 years ago. It brought back a lot of memories." Good memories or bad? Both. I don't regret anything that happened. It made me who I am. But I also wouldn't want to go through it again. You've come a long way. We all have. The question is where we go from here. What do you mean? Heart Consulting is successful. We're growing. We're profitable. But I'm not sure what the next evolution looks like. Do we keep expanding? Do we diversify into other services? Do I eventually step back and let someone else run it? Those are questions you don't have to answer today. I know. But I like to think ahead. Daniel smiled. That's one of the things I admire about you. You're never satisfied with where you are. You're always thinking about what comes next. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's a Natasha thing. We both laughed. It felt good to have someone in my life who understood my drive without trying to diminish it or compete with it. Over the next few months, I started thinking seriously about what came next for Heart Consulting. We had achieved everything I'd set out to do in the beginning. We were successful, respected, and profitable. But what was the next mountain to climb? I called a strategic planning session with my executive team. We spent 3 days at an off-site location discussing our vision for the next 5 years. What if we started an acquisition strategy? Olivia suggested. There are dozens of small consulting firms that have good talent but lack the infrastructure to grow. We could acquire them, give them resources, and expand our service offerings. That's interesting, I said. What else? My COO suggested expanding our international presence. We're strong in North America, but we're barely present in Asia and Europe. There's huge potential there. My CFO talked about potentially developing our own software products that we could license to other consulting firms. We've built proprietary tools for our own use. Why not monetize them? Each idea had merit. We spent hours debating, planning, and projecting. By the end of our session, we had a comprehensive 5-year plan that would double our size and triple our revenue. As we were leaving, Olivia pulled me aside. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "Are you happy?" The question surprised me. "What do you mean?" "You've achieved everything you set out to do. You built an empire. You proved everyone wrong. But are you happy? As a person, not just as a CEO?" I thought about it. "I'm satisfied. I'm proud. I'm fulfilled by my work. But are you happy?" "I don't know if happiness is the goal. I have purpose. I have impact. I have freedom. That's enough." "What about personal life? Relationships? Love?" "I don't have time for that. Or you don't make time for it." She was right and we both knew it. I had built an incredible professional life but had neglected everything else. I worked constantly. My closest relationships were with my employees. I couldn't remember the last time I'd done something just for fun. "Maybe I should work on that," I admitted. "Maybe you should." That conversation stayed with me. I had spent 9 years building Heart Consulting and rebuilding my life. But somewhere along the way, I had forgotten that life was supposed to be about more than just work. I started making small changes. I blocked out 1 day a week where I didn't check email or take meetings. I started going to art galleries and concerts. I rekindled friendships that I'd let fade because I was too busy. And I started saying yes when Daniel asked me to dinner, not as a business meeting but as something more personal. "This is different," he said during our first official date. "What is?" "This. Actually taking time to just be together without talking about business. It feels strange." "Good strange or bad strange?" "Good strange. I'm just not used to it." "You don't have to be anything other than yourself with me, Natasha. No pressure. No expectations. Just two people enjoying each other's company." That simple statement meant more to me than he probably realized. For the first time in years, I was with someone who didn't need me to be CEO Natasha or successful Natasha or any version other than just Natasha. Our relationship developed slowly. Daniel traveled frequently for his work and I traveled for mine. But when we were in the same city, we made time for each other. He never asked me to prioritize him over my work, and I never asked him to be something he wasn't. It was easy in a way that my marriage to Trevor had never been. Rita noticed the change in me. "You seem lighter," she said during one of our regular lunches. "I feel lighter. I'm still working hard, but I'm not carrying the weight of trying to prove something anymore. Because you already proved it. Maybe. Or maybe I finally realized I don't need to prove anything to anyone. Not even to yourself? Especially not to myself. I know who I am now. I know what I'm capable of. That's enough." 10 years after leaving Trevor, Hart Consulting was worth $1.2 billion. My personal net worth had grown to $700 million. I had achieved everything I'd set out to achieve and more. I had built an empire. I had proved that I was more than anyone's wife or anyone's decoration. I had created something that would last long after I was gone. But more importantly, I had learned that success wasn't about the numbers. It was about having the freedom to make choices, the courage to take risks, and the wisdom to know that your worth isn't determined by anyone's opinion, not your husband's, not your client's, not even your own harsh inner voice. I was finally, completely, authentically myself. And that was the greatest success of all. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I got the call. I was in my office reviewing a proposal for a potential client when Monica buzzed me on the intercom. "Natasha, there's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's urgent." Something in her voice made me pay attention. "Who is it?" "Boss. Trevor Blackwood." I felt my stomach drop. I hadn't seen or spoken to Trevor in over 7 years. Last I'd heard, he had been released from federal prison 6 months ago after serving his sentence. I had purposely avoided any information about what he was doing now. "Tell him I'm not available." I tried. "He's refusing to leave. He says he'll wait as long as necessary." I considered calling security immediately, but curiosity got the better of me. What could Trevor possibly want after all these years? "Give me 5 minutes, then send him in." I used those 5 minutes to prepare myself emotionally. The last time Trevor had shown up at my office, I had thrown him out. This time would be no different. When he walked through my door, I was shocked by how much he had changed. The confident, arrogant man I'd been married to was gone. Trevor looked older than his 45 years. His suit was off the rack instead of custom-made. His hair was graying at the temples. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. "Natasha," he said. "Thank you for seeing me. You have 10 minutes. I know I'm probably the last person you want to see. You're right about that." He sat down without being invited, which annoyed me. Even now, he assumed he had the right to make himself comfortable in my space. "I've been out of prison for 6 months, he said. "I've been trying to rebuild my life. It's been difficult." "I'm sure it has. What does that have to do with me?" "I made a lot of mistakes, Natasha. The affair, the way I treated you, the financial fraud that sent me to prison. I've had a lot of time to think about all of it. And I wanted to tell you that I'm sorry." I studied him carefully. He looked sincere, but I'd been fooled by his sincerity before. "Is that why you're here? To apologize?" "Partly. I also wanted to see you. To see what you've built. I've followed Hart Consulting's success. It's impressive." "Thank you. Your 10 minutes are up." "Wait, please. I need to tell you something else." Against my better judgment, I gestured for him to continue. "I lost everything," he said. "My company, my reputation, my freedom. When I got out of prison, I had nothing. No money, no job prospects, no friends. Everyone I thought cared about me disappeared the moment I was convicted. The only person who visited me in prison was my mother, and even she eventually stopped coming. That must have been hard. It was devastating. But it also taught me something. It taught me the difference between people who value you and people who value what you can do for them. When I had money and power, I was surrounded by people. When I had nothing, I was alone. And you're telling me this because? Because you were the only real thing in my life and I destroyed it. You loved me. Not my money, not my status. Just me. And I threw that away because I was too arrogant to see its value. I felt a flicker of something, not sympathy, but a distant recognition of his pain. Then I remembered the night at the charity gala, listening to him mock me through a closed door. The flicker disappeared. "Trevor, I appreciate the apology. But you're 10 years too late. I've built a life that has nothing to do with you. I don't need your apology or your regrets. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that you were right about everything. I was arrogant. I was cruel. I took you for granted. And I've paid for it every day since you left." "Good." The word came out harsher than I intended, but I didn't take it back. Trevor looked down at his hands. "There's one more thing. I need help." There it was. The real reason for his visit. What kind of help? Financial help. "I'm broke, Natasha. I have nothing. I've been working as a consultant for a small firm, making barely enough to cover rent. I can't get loans because of my criminal record. I can't start a business because no one will work with me. I'm struggling just to survive. And you thought I would help you. You're the only person I can ask. Everyone else has written me off. But you're successful now. You have more money than you could ever spend. You thought maybe I would give you money because we used to be married? Because you have a generous heart. You always did. I stood up. Let me make something very clear. I will never give you money. I will never help you rebuild your life. I will never do anything for you except have security escort you out of this building. Natasha, please. You came here because you need something from me. Just like you've always needed something from me. When we were married, you needed me to be the perfect wife, to manage your life, to make you look good. Now you need me to be your bank. But I'm not your wife and I'm not your bank. I'm nothing to you. I'm desperate. That's not my problem. You made choices that led to consequences. I didn't send you to prison. Your own illegal actions did that. I didn't take your money. Your investors and the government did that. I didn't abandon you when you went to prison. Your so-called friends did that. None of that has anything to do with me. But you're the only one who can help. No. I'm the only one you think you can manipulate into helping. But I learned a long time ago that I don't owe you anything. Not my money, not my time, not my sympathy. Trevor's face hardened. I made you who you are. If it wasn't for me, you'd still be nobody. And there it was. The real Trevor, coming out the moment he didn't get what he wanted. You didn't make me anything, I said quietly. You held me back. You convinced me I was less than I was. You made me doubt myself. The best thing you ever did for me was show me what I didn't want to be. And the best thing I ever did for myself was leave you. You're heartless. No. I'm free. There's a difference. I pressed the intercom button. Monica, please have security come to my office. You'll regret this, Trevor said, standing up. You think you're better than me now, but you're not. You're just lucky. Luck had nothing to do with it. I worked 16-hour days for years. I built relationships based on trust and results. I made decisions that prioritized long-term value over short-term gains. I did everything you never bothered to do because you thought your name and your money were enough. They weren't. And that's why you're here begging me for help while I'm running a billion-dollar company. Security arrived. 2 guards stood in the doorway. Escort Mr. Blackwood out of the building, I said, and add his name to the list of people who are not allowed back. As they led him toward the door, Trevor turned back to look at me. I hope you're proud of yourself. I am. Very much so. After he left, I sat down at my desk and took a long breath. My hands were shaking slightly from adrenaline, but I felt strangely calm. Monica appeared in the doorway. Are you okay? I'm perfect. That looked intense. It was. But it's over now. He's gone and he won't be back. That evening, I met Daniel for dinner. I told him about Trevor's visit. How do you feel? He asked. I feel nothing. Maybe that sounds cold, but it's true. He wanted me to feel sorry for him and I just didn't. He destroyed his own life. I had nothing to do with it. You didn't owe him anything. I know. But I think part of him still believes I do. Like because we were married once, I should help him now. But that's not how life works. No, it's not. The worst part was when he tried to take credit for my success. He actually said he made me who I am. Daniel laughed. That's ridiculous. I know. But it's what he needs to believe. Because if he admits that I succeeded entirely on my own, then he has to admit that I never needed him. And his ego can't handle that. Well, I think you handled it perfectly. You set boundaries, you didn't give in to manipulation, and you removed him from your space. That takes strength. It didn't feel like strength. It just felt like common sense. That's because you've grown so much. The Natasha from 10 years ago might have felt guilty or tried to help. But you know better now. He was right. 10 years ago, I might have given Trevor money out of guilt or a misplaced sense of obligation. But I had learned that helping people who had hurt you didn't heal anything. It just enabled them to keep making the same mistakes. That night, I lay in bed thinking about Trevor's visit. Part of me wondered if I had been too harsh. But the bigger part of me knew I had done exactly what I needed to do. Trevor had come to my office looking for a rescue. But I wasn't in the business of rescuing people who had pushed me off a cliff and then expected me to throw them a rope. He had made his choices. Now he would live with them. Just like I was living with mine. And my choices had led to success, freedom, and a life I was proud of. His had led to prison, poverty, and desperation. That wasn't my fault or my responsibility. It was simply the natural consequence of the very different paths we had chosen. 12 years after walking out of Trevor's penthouse, I stood on the balcony of my home in Connecticut, watching the sunrise over the water. Hart Consulting had just been valued at $3 billion. We had offices in 12 countries, employed 2,000 people, and had worked with some of the biggest companies in the world. But the numbers weren't what made me proud. What made me proud was the culture we had built, a company where people were valued for their ideas and their work ethic. not their connections or their willingness to play politics. We had a 95% employee retention rate, which was almost unheard of in consulting. People came to work for Hart Consulting and stayed because they felt appreciated and challenged. We promoted from within, we offered generous benefits, and we maintained a strict policy against discrimination and harassment. I had built the kind of company I wished I could have worked for when I was starting my career. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. Board meeting in an hour. Don't be late, boss. I smiled. Olivia was now my co-CEO. 2 years earlier, I had promoted her and restructured the company so we shared leadership. She handled operations and I handled strategy. It was the perfect partnership. I got dressed and drove to our Manhattan office. The building was modern glass and steel, and our name was displayed prominently on the side, Hart Consulting. Every time I saw it, I felt a sense of accomplishment. The board meeting was routine. We reviewed quarterly earnings, discussed expansion plans, and approved several new initiatives. After the meeting, Olivia and I had lunch in my office. I have news, she said. I'm pregnant. I jumped up and hugged her. That's wonderful. How far along? 3 months. I wanted to wait until I was sure before telling anyone. Are you worried about managing work and a baby? A little. But I figure if you can build a billion-dollar company from nothing, I can figure out how to be a working mother. You'll be great at it. And we'll adjust whatever you need us to adjust. Flexible schedule, work from home, whatever helps. Thank you. That means everything. After Olivia left, I sat at my desk thinking about how much had changed. When I started Hart Consulting, I was alone in a tiny office with nothing but determination and my grandmother's inheritance. Now I had thousands of employees, multiple offices, and resources I'd never dreamed of. But the core mission hadn't changed. We still solved problems. We still helped businesses grow. We still created opportunities for talented people who just needed someone to believe in them. That evening I had dinner with Daniel. We had been together for 3 years now, and it was the healthiest relationship I'd ever had. I've been thinking about something, he said as we shared dessert. What's that? I want us to move in together. I set down my fork. We had talked about this before, but I'd always hesitated. My independence was precious to me, and sharing my space felt like giving up some of that independence. I know you value your space, Daniel continued. I'm not asking you to give that up. I'm just saying that we spend most of our time together anyway. Why maintain 2 places? Where would we live? Wherever you want. Your place, my place, somewhere new. I don't care about the location. I care about building a life together. I thought about it. 3 years ago, I would have said no immediately. But I had learned that independence didn't mean being alone. It meant having the freedom to choose who you shared your life with. Okay, I said. Okay. Let's do it. Let's find a place together. Daniel's face lit up. Really? Really? But I'm keeping my Connecticut house. That's non-negotiable. Of course. I would never ask you to give that up. We spent the next month looking at apartments and finally found one we both loved, a penthouse with views of Central Park. It was beautiful, modern, and had enough space for both of us to work from home when needed. Moving in together felt different from being married to Trevor. This time, I was choosing to share my space with someone who respected my independence and supported my ambitions. There was no power dynamic, no control, no sense that I was giving up anything. I was gaining a partner without losing myself. That summer, I received an invitation to speak at my college reunion. Columbia Business School was celebrating its centennial, and they wanted successful alumni to share their stories. I accepted immediately. Standing in front of my fellow alumni, many of whom I hadn't seen in 15 years, I felt a strange sense of completion. These were the people I'd gone to school with, the ones who had the same education and opportunities I'd had. Some had gone on to great success. Others had taken different paths. When I graduated from Columbia, I thought success meant climbing the corporate ladder, making a lot of money, and proving I was smart enough to compete with anyone. I did climb that ladder, but not in the way I expected. I married someone successful and put my career on hold to support his. For years I thought that was enough. It wasn't. I told them about leaving my marriage, starting Hart Consulting, and building it from nothing into what it had become. The biggest lesson I learned, I said, is that success isn't about what other people think of you. It's about what you think of yourself. I spent years letting someone else define my worth. The moment I started defining it myself, everything changed. After my speech, several people came up to talk to me. Some wanted business cards. Others wanted advice. And a few just wanted to tell me that my story had inspired them to make changes in their own lives. One woman, who I vaguely remembered from a marketing class, pulled me aside. I'm in a situation similar to what you described. I've been married for 10 years to someone who doesn't respect what I do. I keep telling myself it's not that bad, but it is that bad. Then leave, I said simply. It's not that easy. It's not easy, but it's simple. You decide what you're willing to tolerate and you act accordingly. Nobody can make that decision for you. What if I can't survive on my own? You can. I promise you can. It won't be comfortable at first. You'll doubt yourself. You'll be scared. But you'll survive. And eventually you'll thrive. She nodded slowly. Thank you. As I left the reunion that evening, I thought about all the versions of Natasha Hart who had existed over the years. The ambitious business school student. The supportive wife. The devastated woman listening outside that lounge at the charity gala. The terrified entrepreneur starting from nothing. The successful CEO. They were all me. And each version had been necessary to become who I was now. 6 months later, Hart Consulting was acquired by a major multinational corporation for $4 billion. I could have held out for more, but I was ready to let go. I stayed on as an advisor, but Olivia took over full leadership. She had earned it and I trusted her completely. With the acquisition complete, my net worth was approximately $2.4 billion. I was officially a billionaire. But more importantly, I was free. Free to choose what I worked on. Free to travel. Free to invest in causes I believed in. Free to live exactly the life I wanted. I started a foundation focused on helping women leave abusive or controlling relationships and rebuild their lives. We provided financial assistance, job training, legal support, and mentorship. Every woman who came through our program reminded me of who I'd been 12 years earlier, scared but determined to change. I split my time between New York and Connecticut, working when I wanted to and resting when I needed to. Daniel and I traveled together, exploring countries we'd always wanted to visit. I stayed in touch with all the people who had helped me along the way. Rita was still my best friend. Colette was still a trusted advisor. Brandon's company had grown into a successful mid-sized firm. The people who had believed in me when I had nothing were still part of my life now that I had everything. One afternoon, I was sitting on my balcony reading when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Hello. Ms. Hart, my name is Jessica. I'm calling because Camille Johnson gave me your number. She said you helped her leave her marriage and start over. I remembered Camille. I had met with her 10 years ago when she was in the same situation I'd been in. How is Camille? She's wonderful. She has her own business now and she's happy. She said you changed her life. I just gave her some advice. She said it was more than that. You gave her hope. And she thought maybe you could do the same for me. I listened to Jessica's story. It was heartbreakingly similar to my own and Camille's. A controlling husband. Years of losing herself. Fear of leaving. But also a growing determination to change. Can you meet me? Jessica asked. I know you must be busy, but I don't know who else to talk to. Of course. Come to my office next Tuesday. After I hung up, I sat thinking about the chain of events that had led to this moment. I had helped Camille. Camille had rebuilt her life and then helped Jessica. Jessica would probably help someone else someday. That was the real measure of success. Not the money or the accolades or the company valuation. It was the impact you had on other people's lives. The doors you opened for them. The courage you helped them find in themselves. That evening, Daniel and I were having dinner when he said, "You've been thinking about something all day. What is it?" I was thinking about Trevor. Really? Why? Because I realized something. He spent his entire life trying to prove he was important by accumulating money and power. But he never built anything real. His company was built on fraud. His relationships were built on what he could do for people. When everything collapsed, there was nothing underneath. And I built something real. A company that creates value. Relationships based on trust. A life that means something beyond just making money. He tried to convince me I was nothing without him, but the truth is he had nothing without his money. And when his money was gone, so was he. You're not like him at all. No, I'm not. And I'm grateful for that. Later that night, I stood on my balcony watching the moon reflect on the water. Somewhere out there, Trevor was living his life and I was living mine. We had started from the same place 12 years ago, but we had taken very different paths. He had chosen arrogance, betrayal, and fraud. I had chosen humility, honesty, and hard work. He had lost everything. I had gained everything. Not because I was better than him, but because I had made better choices. As I went inside, I caught my reflection in the glass door. I looked happy. Genuinely happy. Not the performed happiness of my marriage to Trevor, but the real happiness of someone who knew exactly who she was and liked that person. 12 years ago, Trevor told me I couldn't live without him. He was wrong. I had not only lived without him, I had thrived without him. I had built an empire. Not just a business empire, but an empire of self-respect, authentic relationships, and meaningful work. And the best part? I had done it all on my own terms. The revenge Trevor feared never came from me doing anything to him. It came from me doing something for myself. It came from me proving that every cruel word he'd said about me was a lie. I was never helpless. I was never dependent. I was never just decoration. I was always capable. I was always strong. I was always enough. It just took walking away from him to remember that. As I climbed into bed that night, I smiled to myself. Trevor had told me I couldn't live without him. I had built an empire that proved otherwise. And that was the sweetest revenge of all.